Talk to Internal Audit. Grab a cup of tea or a glass of water. It's a lovely day, and join me for a chat around how we might support each other through the ongoing challenges for internal audit as we move through the remainder of 2020 and into 2021. I'm Liz Sandwith. I'm the Chief Professional Practices Advisor at the Chartered Institute of Internal Auditors UK and Ireland. The Chartered Institute is the only professional body dedicated exclusively to training, supporting and representing internal auditors in the UK and Ireland. We have approximately 10,000 members in all sectors of the economy in all parts of UK and Ireland. And our members are part of a global network of in excess of 200,000 members in 170 countries, all working to the same international standards and codes of ethics. So what are we going to have a look at today? Well, I thought it might be the opportunity to reflect on Risk in Focus 2020. So a bit of a retrospective, thinking about hot pants, Mary Quant lipstick, all of those sorts of things. We're looking back. We're looking to see where we were in 2019. What did we think looking ahead? So what did the top 10 risks look like in September 2019? When we were anticipating the year ahead, what were we thinking? Was crisis management, BCP and pandemic on your risk register? Probably not. And if not, why might that have been? Because if we reflect, some of the key speakers in the world, the World Economic Forum, Bill Gates, etc., have been talking about pandemics since 2015 at least. What are the key risk lessons we've learned over the last 12 months, and has our learning put us in a stronger place? Remember, if you like your Facebook streams or want to spread the word, and I'm sure you do, be sure to share today's live stream. You can do that by clicking the share button in the corner of your screen. After all, the more the merrier. Perhaps you're unsure what Risk in Focus is. If so, may I tell you? It is the annual barometer of what chief audit execs perceive as their organization's risk priorities. What is preoccupying their thinking as they prepare their forthcoming internal audit plan? We, as an institute, see Risk in Focus as a vital point of reference for the internal audit profession, not just in Europe, where the annual surveys and interviews are carried out, but worldwide. And indeed, I have spoken with professional internal audit professionals in the Far East and in North America and in South America. And they also have used Risk in Focus to help sense check their internal audit plan. Risk is not solely the domain of internal audit, of course. Therefore, while the report may serve as a valuable document for chief audit execs and internal auditors in helping to shape and challenge their own internal audit plans and their thinking, but we also hope it serves as an important benchmarking and consultation tool for a wide stakeholder group. Indeed, this report is as relevant for boards and audit committees as it is for risk managers and other assurance providers. Inevitably, risk assurance is an idiosyncratic exercise that meets the specific needs of your organization. Rotational cyclical audits should now be a thing of the past, except of course, where you have regulatory obligations to undertake internal audits on a cyclical basis. Internal audit is striving to be risk-based and agile, and we talk as an institute a lot about agile in terms of methodologies or just mindset, the way we think. So we're about responding to and preempting emerging risks and stepping into our trusted advisor role whenever called upon so to do. So for this reason, the report should serve as a resource for you and for chief audit execs to inform, challenge and sense check their next audit plan, and to provide context for discussions with senior management and the board. And as I'm sure you will be aware, we not only issue our comprehensive report, but we also issue a shorter board briefing, which is ideal to be shared with your CEO, your senior management team, and of course, your audit and/or risk committees. So I thought we might start by reminding ourselves of what the top 10 risks were in 2020 in our Risk in Focus report. As you might expect, cyber and data privacy were top, #1 risk. We then had the increasing regulatory burdens, digitization and business model disruption, looking beyond third parties, business resilience, brand value and reputation, financial risks from low returns to rising debt, geopolitical instability in the macro economy, human capital, the organization of the future, skill sets, what are you looking for, managing talent, governance, ethics, culture, the exemplary organization. Is that you? Climate change, risk versus opportunity. Cyber and data security firmly established itself as a top of mind issue for the majority of audit execs. And probably you won't be surprised to find that it's somewhere very near the top, if not the top, but I'm not letting secrets out of the bag, in the Risk in Focus 2021 report. Formerly a business continuity, financial and reputational concern, cybersecurity has also now taken on a compliance dimension as companies continue to make efforts to stay on the right side of GDPR. Regulatory matters remain a chief concern for the majority of CAs, who stress the need to remain compliant with antitrust, anti-bribery and corruption, anti-money laundering laws and sanctions. There was also a persistent concern about the effects of digitization, which of course is a clear source of both risk and business opportunity, as established companies faced heavy competition and sectors undergo rapid evolution and convergence. CAs are rightly questioning what digitization means for the future of their organization's business model. So what I'd like to do now is I would like to introduce you to my guest for today, Derek Jamieson. Derek is our regional director at the Institute and has been running for the last 23 weeks our Heads of Internal Audit virtual forum. So risk control issues uppermost in his mind. Just before I hand you over to Derek, so he can share some thoughts with us initially, can I remind you that today we're talking about Risk in Focus 2020, bit of a look back, a retrospective. Have you got over thinking about me with Mary Quant lipstick on? What did the top 10 risks look like? And what have we learned from this year? Thinking about what our thoughts were in 2019 and now a year on, where are our thinking? So I would like to hear, as I'm sure you would, from Derek and what his thoughts are about Risk in Focus 2020, what he thinks we may have learned, and what he is speculating will be in Risk in Focus 2021. So Derek, what were you doing in September 2019? Do you remember?
Thank you, Liz. I've got my coffee. I certainly remember, but the first thing I have to say is the image of hot pants, Mary Quant, you've knocked me sideways this morning, Liz. Thank you very much for that. Anyway, back to this time last year. On the 17th of September last year, I was just about to present and chair the Welsh Conference in Cardiff. My first time standing up in front of a bunch of internal auditors on behalf of the Institute, and something I thoroughly enjoyed doing, particularly meeting the attendees at the conference from all places around Wales and even as far as United Arab Emirates. So much fun there, and it will be relevant for what I say in the next few minutes. So reflections of Risk in Focus 2020. I suppose it's fair to say that I expected it to have just about all the headings that were in it. That's not a negative comment. And they all turned up, so I was delighted. I didn't expect, and this is a positive comment, a very positive comment, I didn't expect all the detail that was within that and the insight that led to the headings, if you like. So I had a perspective that was slightly different on some things, and the on that report, that was the third or the fourth report I personally used. So in my previous role, working for a firm and also another organisation, yes, I used the report, and I was pleased to see that more and more often people were looking for the report and actually taking value from it. Always good to see, and particularly good to see when you're talking to audit committees and somebody's actually asking you if you've seen the report and if they can have a copy of it. Excellent response to see, to be honest. It shows value in the report, and it shows credibility in the profession as a whole in giving that input, which resonates with audit committee chairs. So excellent from my perspective. On reflection though, did we miss anything last year? Well, I think the events of this year potentially suggest crisis management might have been a heading last year. I think potentially we could look back now and say, should crisis management have been there every year for the last few years? Because as Liz already said, haven't you, Liz, this has been coming for a while. It's been forecast. People other than internal audit, other than many of our organisations and above and beyond them, have been forecasting this. So there's a lesson for us, and it'll come through something else I'll say in a few minutes. There's a lesson for us to open our minds, open our heads to the space of what's going on outside internal audit profession, what's going on in the environment, what's going on in the economy, who are the big speakers, who are the big thought leadership people. Listen to them, because they are having value, they are deriving value for us, and we need to listen to it. So I think it tested us there. I don't think we got crisis management right, and I'm actually going to come back to you, Liz, and ask your view that in a second, if that's all right. What else did I think it missed? I'm going to suggest that climate should be higher than number 10. We've spoken in the Institute for a number of months on this, quite a number of months now, and I think the growing perception from us is that climate, I don't think anyone can now deny it, it's changing, but climate's there. It's not getting as high as it could do because we always have something more immediate to deal with. And that's going to be the challenge for us going forward. If we can play that back into our work life, quite often we'll find ourselves as organisations and internal audit functions focusing on the immediate, the current issue. How often do we help our organisations stand back, look up, and really challenge ourselves about whether we're thinking about what's next, what's coming next? And that ultimately is the role of internal audit, is it not? To help the sustainability of the organisation we work for. So I'm going to go back a bit and just reflect the question back on Liz, if you like. Liz, crisis management, should we have actually seen this coming?
I think that's a really challenging question, Derek, and a very good question. I think that with the benefit of hindsight, yes, we should, of course, have been thinking about it. I think a lot of organisations, as you absolutely have articulated, have so many other things that they think about. And I know, for example, a CEO of an organisation who used a pandemic to do their business continuity test in January this year, their annual test for the organisation in terms of how they would react to a particular scenario. And they did it, and when he reported it back to his audit committee, they laughed. They said, what was the point of that? Totally wasted time. You should have picked something that was more relevant. So I think it wasn't only not on internal audit's radar, perhaps. I think it was not on anybody's radar, except perhaps those that have been talking about it for a long time. But I do think it reflects on us to start horizon scanning more, to looking to the future, to thinking about what's coming down the track, and also looking to other countries across the globe. Is there something there that could come here that could impact on our organization? Particularly, I think, when suppliers, customers are global these days rather than on your doorstep or in your country. So yes, I think we should have perhaps been more aware, but I think there are perhaps some, as you have articulated, some reasons why perhaps that wasn't top of our radar. So Derek, what about other thoughts you may have.
Quite a few. I've got a few. I'll come back to climate for a second, but I will come back again to COVID as well. Back to climate. Why do I think it's important? Because it affects me on a daily basis. The world is changing. It's obvious to see. You can't pick up a paper, read a newspaper, read an article on the internet without seeing this coming to pass. I even read an article this morning about coffee production being impacted by climate change, and coffee rust, I think they call it, impacting the crops in South America. The very clear view is this is climate change having an impact, not something I even perceived as potentially happening to coffee, to be honest. Something I thrive on, to be honest, as well. And the question for me is, are we having a right discussion with audit committees? Liz and I, doing my Chapter 0, we're also involved as an institute with an organisation called, sorry, pardon me, I've forgotten the name there, Climate Change Group. We talk to these on a regular basis, and it's clear everywhere coming on organisations to adapt to the rate. So I would have hoped this year climate change will be up the charts a little bit better. But go back to COVID for a second, and actually giving us some credit, hopefully. No, we didn't necessarily identify COVID as a risk and the crisis that would deliver, but we did identify some elements of what organisations have had to do over the course of this year. So, for example, third parties, we identified that last year. We said it's in the top 10, and it's not just the third parties, but looking through third parties. I don't think there'll be many organisations who haven't had to do that this year. And hopefully, if we've done audit work prior to the crisis kicking in, that added real insight and real value for our organisations. I also think, not just on third parties, but on resilience. We identified resilience and reputation as two risky areas. So again, both of those have absolutely come to pass in the course of the last 6-7 months. So again, same point, I hope the work we've done, if we have done it prior to the crisis or even during it, has added value. Because if we're talking about resilience, resilience takes all forms and fashions in terms of the potential impacts on it. So very, very keen to hear from members about how it affected them and how they actually responded to it. And last comment for just now, as you mentioned, Liz, we've been running the Heads of Internal Audit Forum and also now the Heads of Internal Audit Forum for local authorities for quite a number of weeks now. We talked to a range of organisations about the impacts they had from COVID this year and about what they're thinking going forward. Everyone's changing their planning, everyone's changing what happens in the organisations they work for. So looking forward, I hope a lot of these subjects still exist because cyber's still there, always will be there. But I think the nuances will change now. I think we have to look far more into the future, really understand what's going on, and understand as well the pace of change is far higher than we actually thought it might be. Let's just back to yourself for a second, if that's okay. The pace of change, we talked about this 2 or 3 times over the last, well, weeks and months, to be honest. We've never seen anything like this, have we?
No, we haven't. I think that's true of all sorts of organisations, and there've been some brilliant examples. So, you know, Burberry went from making designer coats and clothes to making PPE to meet a need. Barber did much the same. Lots of organisations have been exploring new opportunities to respond to the crisis, absolutely, but also thinking about their ongoing sustainability in terms of ensuring that they're going to be here for the future. So perhaps slightly disappointingly for me, a number of gin companies have moved to hand sanitizers. I'm sure they'll come back to making gin in the future, which is reassuring to think about. But the one that you mentioned, Derek, that I want to pick up on is reputation, because I think that reputation is a risk that sometimes we don't treat seriously enough. I think we tend to think as internal audit professionals that reputation is a consequence of other things that happen, which is true, of course. So, you know, you have a cyber attack and you lose customer data, the reputation to your organization is impacted by that. But I think reputation is also a standalone risk in terms of thinking about your organization. What are your customers' views of your organization? How does your organization's strategic goals and objectives, its purpose, its mission, its business model, how do they all pull together to drive your organization forward so that it is sustainable and also survivable into the future? And we've seen, you know, through some of the events that have occurred recently, and I'm thinking particularly of Black Lives Matter, we've seen organizations that have put out on their website statements about, you know, supporting the cause and the issue. And then when journalists have dug deeper, have found that the organization is not is not living what it's talking about. So it's talking the talk, it's not walking the walk. And I think that's another area where internal audit needs to have a role to play. So I'm going to ask you, when did you last audit or even talk to your corporate affairs department about the reputation of the organization? Does your CEO have a resilience statement that he can use or she can use in the event of some event happening in your organization, so that the statement they give to the journalists, the customers, suppliers, is a positive, well thought through one during a period of calm rather than in a period of crisis? So Derek, your thoughts, reputation, is that something that is of concern to you?
Absolutely, Liz. Reputation is the sum total of everything we do, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. And people will talk about it as the outcome and say we should look at everything else, and reputation will follow. There's also another way of looking at it, as we talked about before, which is looking at the value attached to reputation and reputational damage, which is possible to do and we've seen done elsewhere. So I'd absolutely support the need for discussions on reputation. What are we doing about maintaining it? What are we doing about mitigating any potential disasters to it? And that can happen very, very quickly, as we can talk about with lots of examples in the past. There's two other risks, if I may, just to talk about briefly. One from 2019, which didn't appear in 2020, which just on reflection, I'm wondering if it might appear in 2021. We won't know till we find out. And that really is a risk that was articulated as an era of trade, or a new era of trade. I think it was articulating the fact the world was changing, trade was changing, how we do business was changing. Fair to say perhaps that the word Brexit might apply now. Fair to say that geopolitical uncertainty, discussions, wars, whatever you want to call them, between heads of state or presidents and other organisations, other countries, might have an impact coming up for some of our organisations. So I think that particular subject we all have to be aware of. How does trade and change in trade regulations actually potentially impact our organisations? Not just physical products, not just virtual trade, but the reality that no matter how we do business, there's going to be impact in the next 6 months or so. No idea of the detail. Who does? That's uncertainty. That talks about resilience again. It talks about potential crisis management if things don't go according to plan at all. So that's interesting for me. The other one that I wanted to talk about briefly, Liz, was from last year's 2021, was the human capital element. How important is human capital, and what's been happening in the last 6 months to underline that importance? We've had the crisis again. So in a sense, we did identify the risk. We didn't necessarily identify what would trigger it even more so this year. But how many organisations haven't had to spend, for all the right reasons, a huge amount of time to make sure their staff were safe and the staff were being looked after and the staff were still doing the work, but within a revised, completely revised environment and framework of management, if you like. Key issue during the last 6 months, but potentially also even more important going forward, because I think we might all say the same thing. Most of us have, or are having, or will have tomorrow, a little bit of tiredness with being online all the time, with being virtual all the time. Some of us might be fed up working at home. Some of us might want back to work as soon as possible. How are we going to manage our human capital in an environment which is substantially changed, with some of us not back at work, physically back at work, and others of us potentially at a second crisis comes through the door, I'm talking about a second wave here, what happens in that environment? So whatever we've done over the last 6 months has been excellent for most people and most organisations. It's not finished yet, and it's still a risk, I think. Your view on that, Liz?
I absolutely agree. And I think the other challenge that we're going to find moving forward from everything you're hearing and seeing in the press is reduction in staff. Organisations that you would have held out as being the last to be impacted. You know, we're already seeing, you know, things, shops closing, offices closing, staff being made redundant. And I think that's going to continue to be a challenge. I think also in a slightly different way, it's going to be about upskilling our staff to work in a different way, not just internal auditors, but staff across the organisation to work in this new virtual world, or even a hybrid world where we're in the office a bit, we're at home a bit, but certainly working more as we are doing today on Zoom to communicate with people. Because I think business travel will be a little while before it recovers, if it ever does recover to 2019. So I think human capital is going to be an area that is going to be challenging for organisations as we move forward. The one I just want to finish on, and then you know, we need to think perhaps about winding up, is the risk around governance, ethics and culture. And Derek, you know, you were talking yesterday at our Heads of Internal Audit Forum, and the topic there was culture. And we had two really experienced heads of internal audit talking about undertaking an audit of culture. And I just thought it might be helpful if you could just share some of the sort of headline thoughts that came out of yesterday around culture, because from an institute perspective, I'm not sure we've got this right yet, and I think there's more work to do. So Derek, what do you think?
Thank you very much. I just spilled my coffee, so I've been tidying up for the last 30 seconds. Apologies for that. But culture, close to my heart. I think we've all got some. Yes, the two speakers yesterday portrayed, I think, a reality for the profession just now. I hate the phrase, but I keep using it with culture. It's a journey. It's been an expectation per our standards and code of practice, and also the FS code for a number of years now, but it's not easy. It's not easy to get our heads around. It's not easy to do a review or an audit or whatever we call it. And some of us are now not calling it an audit at all. It's a difficult word to get past key stakeholders. I think it's a very difficult subject. That was portrayed by the discussion yesterday. We had Richard Chambers on the discussion yesterday, so we had our global CEO also recognising that this is a challenging topic. But I think the context is it's critical. It's a critical topic. If we can't identify what culture we want as an organisation, that's a real challenge. And I think most executives and non-executives would say, of course, we can identify the culture we want. Well, if you can identify something, you can also identify a way of measuring it. And I think most of us would recognise that most organisations haven't been particularly good at measuring it. And it's kind of observation I made yesterday, which I've made a number of times in the past, is it's a relatively simple 3-question audit process to run on culture. Have you identified your go-to position, your cultural expectations? If you have, great, step one's done. Have you identified people responsible for monitoring it and reporting it? If you have, great. And have they reported it? If they have, great. But quite often that hasn't happened, and audits had to step into a space that nobody else has been able to actually fill, to be honest. So from the operational side, it's been difficult and challenging. From the audit side, it's been difficult and challenging, and it continues to be a journey. And I think we continue to have to, because we need to and we should do, help the profession get better at auditing culture. Is that enough for you, Liz, on that?
I think so, Derek. Thank you very much. And thank you for name dropping that Richard Chambers was with you yesterday on Heads of Internal Audit Virtual Forum.
You've always got to be happy when God's there. So.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'd like to start winding this up because, you know, I know we take your time and we try and keep it within the 30 minutes. So future thinking, you know, for me, 2020 was defined by the global coronavirus pandemic. I think it's true of everybody. By March, the research for Risk in Focus 2021 had got underway. Europe had become the epicenter of the biggest public health crisis in living memory. This caught most countries and businesses off guard, despite, as I said at the beginning, the World Economic Forum and Bill Gates had been sounding the alarm on global health security and the probability of a pandemic event for some years. The longer term implications of this exceptional scenario are less clear. Lessons will be learned over the coming months, and lessons have been learned in the past 6 months. But I think that we are going to be going through a process of evolution over the next several years, not just weeks or months. And governments and businesses are going to be changing, just like the internal audit profession is going to have to change to respond to our organization's changing needs, requirements in terms of the sector it's in, its geographical location, and the assurance it's looking for from internal audit. We can and should, must even, assist in this regard. Its unique 360 degree of the business and risk control mindsets can help organizations identify blind spots, opportunities, and improve their operations. That's where internal audit comes to the table. Looking ahead to 2021, internal audit's enterprise-wide perspective has never been more necessary. Boards, executive management, audit committees will depend on this independent top-down viewpoint for insights and foresights into business and risk during what remains a significantly challenging period. So as I come to the conclusion of today, can I remind those of you that are just joining us, today we did a retrospective. We looked back at Risk in Focus 2020. We looked at the risks we were thinking about in 2019, how they have materialized, what has surprised us over the last 12 months, what have we learned, what lessons have we learned, and what new risks are we dealing with today that perhaps we hadn't even anticipated in September 2019. And have we learned some really strong lessons as internal audit in terms of the identification of risk, and also helping organizations by providing real-time assurance through our role perhaps as being redeployed into first and second lines during lockdown. May I say a huge thank you to Derek for joining me today, sharing his thoughts and insights. He's given us lots to reflect on and lots for you to discuss with your internal audit colleagues. As always, the live stream is available afterwards for those of your friends, colleagues who may have missed the live version, and it's on the Institute's Facebook channel. Please follow all of the exciting things the Institute is doing on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And remember, you always have access to the latest edition of our Audit and Risk magazine, if you're a member, which is now available on our website. And this edition, we focused on a number of significant topics, one of which is diversity and inclusion. So have a look and see what some leading heads of internal audit had to say about that. As always, I'm happy to take questions via email at liz.sandwith@iia.org.uk. Next week, 24th of September, Derek and I will be looking at Risk in Focus 2021. So we'll be looking at the here and now. What's on the risk? How do we think on the report? How do we think those risks are going to play out over the next 12 months? The new edition of Risk in Focus will explore the top 10 risks that have been identified, and we will be thinking about whether they resonate with you, your internal audit function, and your organization. Let you into a little secret. Perhaps not surprisingly, cybersecurity remains at number 1. But what are the other 9? Why don't you jot them down and see whether or not you are correct when we issue our Risk in Focus report next Tuesday, the 22nd of September. So put the date in your diary. Over the coming weeks, we're going to be looking at some of the top 10 risks, So as we move forward, remember to join us on a Thursday and hear what we have to say and contribute through the comments section. Don't forget to bring your tea, coffee, water, and don't do what Derek's just done and spill it. Remember, talk to Internal Audit. The Institute is listening. So please stay safe. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Liz. On behalf of me, it's my birthday next week. Thank you for having a birthday party with me next week on the 24th. Thanks, Liz.
My pleasure. You're going to tell us how old you are?
Just over 19.
Thank you for that.